This is CBC Nova Scotia News.
Search Insights. A former RCMP dog handler speaks out about the search for Lily and Jack Sullivan.
Final arguments. Who has the ultimate authority over the Chignecto Isthmus? The court hears the case.
And down on the farm, there are fewer farm workers in Nova Scotia, a drop of more than 1,000 in recent years.
More sunshine on tap for Thursday, though building clouds throughout the day ahead of our next system, which will roll in with some wet weather for Friday. Your full forecast is coming up.
As the investigation into the disappearance of Lily and Jack Sullivan continues, a former RCMP dog handler is weighing in on the search. Glenn Brown says the circumstances strike him as strange.
The two children have been missing since May 2nd, and despite an extensive search, not a trace of them has been found in nearly 3 weeks. The CBC's Ali Thompson tells us more.
After nearly 3 weeks and 8 full days of scouring Lansdowne Station, there's still no sign of Lily and Jack Sullivan. Glenn Brown is having a hard time wrapping his head around that. The retired RCMP dog handler of 26 years says it's baffling to him the children are still missing after such wide-scale searches that included upwards of 160 search and rescue personnel, dogs, helicopters, and drones.
I find it hard to believe that a 6 and 4-year-old would just disappear like that. I guarantee you, if I was still working today, that'd be the thing you'd be racing around your mind all the time. Like, where would they have gone? Like, we have done everything. I think the last thing I read, they searched the square kilometer area, 5 kilometers. That's a big area. And that's meticulously searched.
The children were reported missing from a home on Gairloch Road on May 2nd, sparking a 6-day search that was eventually scaled back. Then, over the weekend, 115 search and rescue crew members were called back. RCMP have not said what prompted them to return, but Brown says it's not unusual to restart a search. He says there are a number of reasons police may call crews back, including tips or new evidence. But if that was the case, that information likely was not known by the search crews or even police officers on the ground.
They may tell them, we got a tip, and we just want you to go in that area and search and see if you find anything. They're not going to tell you exactly what was in the tip. It's not going to do it. They don't even tell their own people that, unless you are in the know, right? Unless it's like you're in that investigative group.
RCMP's major crime unit has been involved since the day after the children disappeared. They say every missing persons investigation is considered suspicious until they have reason to believe otherwise. An RCMP spokesperson would not answer specific questions about this latest search, but says officials will be reviewing the information collected and determining next steps. Ali Thompson, CBC News, Halifax.
And with us now to talk weather, Ryan Snoddon.
A bit warmer and a bit sunnier.
Yeah, that's right. And it's definitely going to be one of the nicer days of the next handful of days, that being Thursday. As we look at the forecast, temperatures highs today still struggled for sure. Single digits, low double digits in the north and east. We did get towards 14 in through the Halifax area and down towards Yarmouth as well. And these temperatures are going to be, again, likely a little bit warmer for northern areas tomorrow, 15 to 16 degrees. Note the wind shift from the east on Thursday. So the Atlantic coastline is going to be a bit cooler, but we will see the sunshine, which is great. This time of year, we'll take it because we've got a system coming in that's going to be bringing us some wet weather for Friday. And let's time it out. So there's Thursday, that easterly flow with some building clouds. And then looks like a really solid band of rain stretching in across the province for Friday morning. And those periods of rain will then make way for scattered showers. And those scattered showers are going to be on tap not only for Friday night, but into Saturday. This is a very slow moving system, though we'll see some breaks in the showers. We're going to want to keep the umbrella handy for this weekend. We'll dive into it with your full 7-day forecast coming up in a few minutes.
All right, appreciate the advice. Thanks very much, Ryan.
Thank you.
Nova Scotia's highest court heard arguments this week in a case about the Chignecto Isthmus. It was supposed to be about legal authority, but questions about money and politics drew much of the focus in the courtroom. Taryn Grant reports.
2 days of arguments in this Halifax courtroom before 3 appeal court judges. Nova Scotia says Canada alone should be in charge of legislating about the Chignecto Isthmus. It's asking the province's highest court to weigh in. Lawyers for the province say it isn't about money, even though Nova Scotia has been fighting with Ottawa outside court about exactly that. And Premier Tim Houston recently put in writing that the court case is about money.
Are you saying that you're asking this question of us so it can be a political football that you can use against the feds?
I certainly wouldn't call it a political football.
Nova Scotia says there could be political implications, but the question before the court is purely about the law. The isthmus crosses the border between Nova Scotia and New Brunswick. The low-lying land is vulnerable to severe flooding, especially as climate change causes sea level rise and more intense storms. A project to bolster the dams, dikes, and abueto that protect the isthmus has a price tag of $2/3 billion. Canada has agreed to pay half, Nova Scotia and New Brunswick a quarter each, but the provinces want Ottawa to pay in full. Because of this funding dispute, lawyers for the federal government say the court shouldn't be involved. They say the case is politically motivated.
And as such, we would argue it's not just a waste of this court's time, it is an abuse of this court's time.
Nova Scotia was forced to repeatedly defend the case that it brought forward.
Speculating and imputing the motives of the province in seeking this court's advisory opinion is respectfully unhelpful and indecorous.
New Brunswick and Prince Edward Island are also participating in the case, supporting Nova Scotia's position. The hearing wrapped on Wednesday, but the judges reserved their decision for another day. Taryn Grant, CBC News, Halifax.
The Nova Scotia Federation of Agriculture projects the province could face a shortage of more than 2,000 farm workers by 2029. At the same time, the number of agriculture workers in the province has declined. That's according to recent data from StatsCan. The CBC's Andrew Lamb reports.
In 2023, Nova Scotia had more than 1,000 fewer agriculture workers compared to 7 years earlier. That's according to data released recently by Statistics Canada. This comes as the Nova Scotia Federation of Agriculture projects the province faces a shortage of 2,600 farm workers by 2029.
I would say a lot of our industry is impacted, but I would think that horticulture and the fruit producers would be the two that are impacted the largest when there's a labor shortage.
According to the data, Nova Scotia had more than 6,000 agriculture employees in 2023, including temporary foreign workers. That's down about 16% from 2016. King says the industry needs to do a better job of communicating the opportunities there are in agriculture to those looking to get into the industry.
You know, I put food on my table, but I put food on my neighbor's table as well. And I think that's really, there's something wholesome about that.
At the same time, the data shows Nova Scotia appears to be relying more heavily on temporary foreign workers in agriculture. In the last 2 years, there were more than 1,900 of those workers employed in the province, a notable increase from the 4 years prior. The executive director of a group that advocates for migrant workers says the agriculture industry would not be able to operate without them.
These numbers really highlight the important role that migrant workers play in Nova Scotia's food security as well as economy. These are workers that help to feed us.
Gomez says those workers need to be protected from abuse. She's calling for targeted labor and safety inspections of workplaces that employ them and open work permits where workers are not tied to a single employer. A recent report from human rights group Amnesty International says Canada's temporary foreign worker program exposes workers to abuse and discrimination. Nova Scotia's increased employment of temporary foreign workers mirrors the trend seen at the national level. Andrew Lamb, CBC News, Halifax.
Canada Post has declined a proposed 2-week pause for the Postal Workers Union to review its new offers. The union had proposed the 14-day truce ahead of a looming strike. Tens of thousands of Canada Post workers could hit the picket lines on Friday. It would be the second strike in less than 6 months. The latest offer, made earlier today, proposes a little over a 13% wage increase distributed over 4 years. The offer comes after Canada Post paused negotiations for a new collective agreement last week. Weekend delivery has been a point of contention during negotiations. Canada Post doesn't currently operate on the weekends, and both sides want to expand operations but disagree on the details. A work stoppage would affect millions of households and businesses who typically get more than 2 billion letters and about 300 million parcels delivered a year.
More than 200 people turned out at the Alderney Theatre in Dartmouth this afternoon to talk about the future of the Dartmouth waterfront.
Flood protection.
Consultants were hired in February to lead the planning project. They're looking for the public's input to guide the planning for more active transportation, better landscaping, waterfront access, climate change mitigation, and better connectivity between downtown and the waterfront. The area under consideration includes the waterfront from the McDonald Bridge to the Woodside Ferry Terminal. Well, it's something we see from time to time in rural parts of Nova Scotia, farm animals loose and out on the road. Now the RCMP and PEI are warning motorists to be cautious heading into the summer months.
And warning owners that sometimes not keeping animals locked up can mean charges. The CBC's Tony Davis has more from PEI.
PEI RCMP are getting more and more calls about escaped farm animals causing issues on island roads. Police have received 80 calls over the last year. That's 20 more than the year prior.
This is a wide range of different animals from cows, horses, pigs, sheep, goats, even had reports of geese on the roadway, and all of which poses a potential hazard.
One group of animals on the loose in Albany resulted in 2 accidents that caused injuries to people and killed 2 cows. In a separate case, police say 80 goats and 2 sheep had to be seized in Sherbrooke. Often animals are recovered with no incident, but it can result in charges under the Provincial Stray Livestock Act.
An animal is not completely predictable. We encourage all islanders while traveling on island roads just to be aware of their surroundings, and if they do see an animal that is loose, it's time to slow down and report that to local police so that everybody can travel safe.
The PEI Cattle Producers Association says farmers do their best to keep animals locked up. They don't want their livelihood to end up as roadkill.
And the gate can't physically come past this. They get playing around and bumping into things, and they could break things, and a lot of times it's an accident. But making sure you have all your safeguards in place, make sure your gates are on hinges, chained and roped, or some form of latch mechanism. Making sure they're at an adequate height, like 5 feet high at least, so that they can't jump over them.
Larson says his animals have escaped before. He says when that happens, it's all hands on deck. In some cases, RCMP work with the province, who dispatches trained livestock wranglers. The provincial drover is called to pick up animals if owners can't be located, and has the authority to hold animals until the situation is fixed. Tony Davis, CBC News, Borden Carlton.
It's a pretty nice place to spend the afternoon down in the
nice,
valley.
Lovely.
It? Ryan's up next with full weather forecast. We're back on the other side of the break.
The weather update is brought to you by Tourisme Gaspésie. Plan your stay in Gaspésie at tourismegaspésie.com and enjoy extraordinary moments.
All right, nice to see the sun today. Soaking it all up. It was fantastic.
You have to really seek it out in stretches like this, right?
That's right. Because it's, again, going to be fading away. So we'll want to make sure, soak it up today and tomorrow before it does disappear.
For the weekend.
Again. But next week looks really good.
Okay, we'll look ahead.
It does look like we're getting back on track.
Good.
As we hopefully end May and welcome June, we'll get onto a more smoother pattern here. Have a look at webcam shot. This taken just seconds ago, and this is a new place. Of course, Nova Scotia webcams, a lot of great spots across the province. This is Tangier on the eastern shore.
Very nice.
Mixing it up.
Nice evening there with lots of sunshine and temperatures along the eastern shore today in that area, around 14 degrees. Between Sheet Harbour and Halifax, and you can see 14 at Keji as well, 12 degrees at Ingonish, 9 the high in Sydney, and 9 at the Caribou Point Station, as well as Westport and Sable. Those are 3 of our cooler spots today where we didn't quite meet double digits, and you can see temps are certainly cooler this evening. And as we look at the forecast for tomorrow, it is going to be an easterly wind. Northeast today has been the name of the game, and that northeast wind has had just a little bit of a chill. Even with the sunshine, it felt cool today, no doubt about that. You can see some gusts upwards of 30 to 35 right now. Some clouds in the mix, but overall it has turned into a really, really nice day. This is the weather system that we're watching, kind of a double-barreled system. High pressure anchored to the north and east of it means it is going to be crawling as it moves to the Maritimes. This is not what we want. We want a quick mover, but this one will be dragging its heels as it moves through the region, enjoying all of the sights of the Maritimes as it slowly moves through. And you can see this unsettled weather stretches all the way back into the prairies and even British Columbia right now, where temperatures are riding cooler than seasonal in most cases. 20 in Winnipeg, just 9 in Toronto right now. And you can see all the warmer air has been squished down to the southern parts of North America. Now, as we look at the forecast for tonight, there is a frost advisory in effect. If you did get eager and got your hands dirty in the garden, good for you. But if there are frost-sensitive plants that you planted over the past couple of weeks, make sure they are bundled up tonight. The winds are still going to be from the northeast, but they will become light enough that there's a pretty solid chance that we'll be waking up to some frost for Thursday morning with those light northeast winds. Now, as we look at Thursday, we'll see some fog patches developing overnight as well. And then into the afternoon, we're looking at a fine day overall. Lots of sunshine to start, increasing clouds into the afternoon, especially for western areas, the Tri-County area, and moving into central as well towards the afternoon and evening. And then that cloud will really thicken up for Thursday night. So with the east wind tomorrow, Ingonish, Sydney, St. Peter's, these are going to be the onshore winds tomorrow. Should get to around 12 to 14 degrees for inland areas, back towards Port Hood and Shettigamp. Maybe a bit of an onshore flow here as well, as those winds are going to be light enough that looks like it will be a bit of a flow coming in from the water here as well. 8 degrees in Canso, 13 to 15, Sherbrooke back towards Antigonish. Pictou, New Glasgow should crack 15 tomorrow. I think Truro around 16 degrees is Parsboro, Amherst looking pretty good. Halifax will range between about 12 to 15 degrees, but cooler if your feet are in the water and right along the coastline there. Single digits along the south shore in that easterly wind. We'll be into the 15-16 range up through the valley, looking pretty good there. There's our periods of rain and some gusty east to southeast winds coming in with that rain as well. So a heads up that Friday will be wet and a little on the windy side, no question. So a little difficult to navigate the umbrella with a day like this. That rain, first band of rain will push off to the north, and we're going to be looking at scattered showers wrapping around this system for Friday night and into Saturday, as you'll see in a second. Temperatures on Friday will range between about 10 to 14 for most. We'll be into the single digits for Cape Breton. And as you can see, for Saturday, as that low kind of spins around through New Brunswick, we are going to likely be into the dry slot of this system, which means the opportunity for some sun breaks, but also the opportunity that we'll see some scattered showers wrapping back into the afternoon and evening. So not a washout, but a day we're going to want to keep an eye on the radar and keep the umbrella handy, the rain jacket handy. A similar story for Sunday, where we'll see scattered showers, just not quite as optimistic that we'll see that push of some sun breaks in there, as we'll be on the other side of the low. And then finally back into some sun and temperatures back a little closer to seasonal, even above seasonal, as we turn the page into the work week.
We'll be cooking
We'll
then.
make up for it. All right. Thanks, Ryan.
Thanks, Ryan.
Thank you.
Coming up, after a court ruling, an old house in South End, Halifax is spared from demolition for now.
A Halifax house has been spared from demolition, at least for now. The Nova Scotia Court of Appeal has reinstated the heritage status of this house on Edward Street. And I'm joined now by Sandra Bars, past president of the Heritage Trust of Nova Scotia. So first of all, how are you feeling about the court ruling?
We're really happy that the court ruled as it did. To us, it reinforces the value of heritage in Nova Scotia and the process by which a property is registered.
What kind of message do you think this ruling sends?
Well, it was very clear that because the Heritage Property Act does not specifically exclude third-party registrations. And this is where a non-owner of the property would apply to have the home or the structure registered as a heritage property. The Act does not exclude that, nor does it specifically include it. But the fact that it does not specifically include it does not mean that it precludes it.
Well, tell me about this third-party effort.
In this case, it was a neighborhood association, the Halifax University Neighborhood Association, who went around. They got many, many signatures, well over 5,000, and objected to not the purchase of the property by Dalhousie University, but the intention to just simply demolish it without any other plan for the property. So it was just going to be demolished, and that would be it. And so the neighborhood association got together, as I said. They had raised a very active petition. Then two of those members spearheaded the application process. And it's, applying is complicated. It's not just a case of, I like this house, I think I'll apply. There's a form to be filled out. There are details that need to be provided to the Heritage Advisory Committee. And only when they have looked at that and they have assessed the application do they then forward it to Municipal Council for consideration. So it's not a simple process.
So when Dow bought this property, it didn't have the designation.
No.
What makes it special enough to have one? What is it about this building?
Well, if you look around, this building is unique in this area. And so and it's the physical attributes that we look at with Heritage Trust for a private structure. And so the exterior physical attributes are different. They're unique in this area, and they're the last. This house is the last in this area to possess those attributes. It was built in 1897, and until the day before Dalhousie purchased it, it was in wonderful shape on the inside and better shape on the outside.
So what happens next? There's no guarantee, though, that this building will remain standing. Is that correct?
No, unfortunately not. That's one of the great failings of the Heritage Property Act, is that Section 18 of that Act allows a property owner who has applied for a demolition permission, even if that permission is rejected, they still have, after 3 years, they can still demolish as long as they do that within the next year. So they have up to 4 years, essentially, to demolish the property.
Well, what does this court decision, what kind of impact does it have on future goals in terms of heritage building protection?
Well, for us, because we know of several applications that were filed with the municipality by third parties for various structures around the city, we think it bodes well, because now the city has no reason to not review the applications and process them and either award or not award a heritage designation. We think that's a very important consideration now.
And as for this building, do you have any other recourse to keep it standing?
We really don't. We wish that we did. Unfortunately, one of the other problems with heritage properties is that they tend to be on large pieces of land, and there is, frankly, an incentive for owners to demolish a property, because then their property taxes are reduced substantially. So the property that might be valued at several $100,000, if you take away the structure, then it's whatever the land happens to be worth. And so, but unfortunately, we have no recourse over what happens with this property. In essence, it could be demolished nearly any time, and that's disappointing to us. Again, one of the failings of the Heritage Property Act.
All right. Well, thank you so much for walking us through this. We appreciate it.
You're most welcome. Thank you for your interest.
In a statement, Dalhousie says it accepts the appeal court's decision and, quote, remains committed to finding the right balance between preservation of our most iconic buildings and development that supports continued university and municipal growth. Coming up, top financial officials from G7 countries hold talks in Alberta amid tariff tensions and international instability.
And there is mounting international pressure on Israel to allow desperately needed aid to enter and be distributed across Gaza. Welcome back. Top financial officials from G7 countries are in Banff, Alberta for a 3-day summit.
They're in closed-door meetings to discuss the global economy, artificial intelligence, and the war in Ukraine. The CBC's Anis Haidari is there with the latest.
Canada's finance minister is meeting his counterparts from the other G7 nations as finance ministers and central bankers from those nations come here to the Rocky Mountains. It's day 2 of their meetings here in Banff, and the formal agenda includes issues ranging from artificial intelligence impact on the economy to fighting financial crime to global trade stability. But of course, along with the many sessions that will look at global trade, broadly speaking, they will be talking about tariffs, even though those are not officially on the agenda. The U.S. is represented here. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent is attending, and that's something past finance ministers say is a major plus for Canada.
I think it's a good thing that the Treasury Secretary is there, as well as the Chairman of the Federal Reserve. These are two of the people that we need to rely upon in Washington.
And in addition to the official agenda, expect many one-on-one meetings between Canadian officials and their counterparts from other countries, including the United States. Canada's finance minister is relatively new to his role, having only taken it on a few months ago. He is newer in that role than many of his counterparts here. In some cases, he'll be meeting some of them for the first time. Anis Haidari, CBC News, Banff.
As you heard earlier, Canada Post has presented its latest contract proposal to the union, representing 55,000 workers. It comes with postal employees poised to hit the picket lines Friday, their second strike in less than 6 months. Marina von Stackelberg has more.
Canada Post presented its employees with a new contract offer just days before the Canadian Union of Postal Workers is set to walk off the job. The union says it offered to hold off on its strike for 2 weeks to take time to look over this new proposal. But under the Labour Code, both sides have to agree to a pause. Canada Post won't. The corporation says after 2 years of negotiations, a resolution is urgently needed, and that delaying a deal longer isn't in anyone's interests. But the union questions the corporation's timing.
What we're saying is why didn't they give us this offer in December? Why didn't they give it to us last week? They say they have an offer for us, and they put it right up against the deadline.
Canada Post's latest offer includes a wage increase of close to 14% over the next 4 years, plus 6 additional personal days. One of the big items the two sides are at odds over is expanding delivery schedules, including on weekends. Canada Post says to compete with private companies like Amazon, it needs to deliver 7 days a week. It wants to hire part-time staff to do that. The union wants full-time employees on those shifts, but the company says it needs more flexibility.
It's really about, do we continue to try and preserve the status quo? Or do we just say it's 2025, the delivery world has changed, we're part of the delivery world, so we need to change as well.
Canada Post has warned it can't sustain itself much longer with its current business model. The Crown Corporation is effectively bankrupt. Since 2018, it's bled more than $3 billion. Earlier this year, the federal government bailed Canada Post out with a $1 billion loan because it had run out of money to keep operating. Marina von Stackelberg, CBC News, Ottawa.
The Prime Minister's office has confirmed Canada is in talks to participate in Donald Trump's Golden Dome missile defense shield. The PMO says the discussions include strengthening NORAD and related initiatives like the Golden Dome. The U.S. president says the system will intercept missiles launched from anywhere, even those from space. Trump says the complex, multi-layered system will cost $175 billion, and it'll be completed within his term, which ends in 2029. Trump says Canada will pay its, quote, fair share of the costs.
Dozens of aid trucks have entered Gaza following an 11-week blockade by Israel. But humanitarian groups say that aid still hasn't reached Palestinians in need. The CBC's Briar Stewart reports.
Some of Gaza's youngest are so hungry, they're scraping the sides of pots, trying to get the last of the soup. while others huddle together with their shattered families, preparing to bury the latest dead. Hamas keeps talking about the resistance, this man said in an interview with CBC News. Let the resistance come and sit here. They can bring their women and children. But this man blames Israel, saying these deaths are crimes, but there is no international law. Palestinian health officials say dozens of people have been killed in strikes in the past day, including, residents say, a 10-year-old baby. There's no end to the misery here. Israel says it's lifted its blockade on aid, but officials say none of that food has made it to the hundreds of thousands of people displaced.
This humanitarian situation is getting worse and worse, and in the same time, the Israelis are putting restrictions on the access to these supplies.
The UN says the aid is being held up because Israel picked a route for the trucks, which humanitarian groups considered insecure and vulnerable to looting. The World Food Programme says around 500,000 people in Gaza are at risk of famine.
This is a manufactured crisis that we are witness to.
The director of Doctors Without Borders in Canada says the country should be playing a leading role in pressuring Israel to end its war and allow in more aid.
I think it's about time that we take a cold, hard look at ourselves and we hold our leaders to account to really demonstrate strong moral courage and political will.
Benjamin Netanyahu rebuffed any criticism, saying a strike launched on a Gaza hospital last week likely killed a Hamas leader. Israel believes that 20 hostages are still alive. And while the country's prime minister said there could be an opportunity for a temporary ceasefire, he vowed that in the end, all of Gaza will be under Israeli control. Briar Stewart, CBC News, London.
The humanitarian crisis in Gaza was among the issues that Pope Leo addressed in his first ever general audience at the Vatican on Wednesday. The Pope appealed for Israel to allow aid to enter Gaza, calling the situation, quote, worrying and saddening. Leo also used his address to honor his predecessor, Pope Francis, before taking a drive around St. Peter's Square in the Pope-mobile. The Vatican says over 40,000 people were in attendance for the audience. The general audience is a weekly appointment every Wednesday that popes have kept for decades, allowing for ordinary faithful to have face-to-face encounters with the pontiff.
South Africans had hoped a presidential visit to the U.S. would offer a reset in relations and a path to a trade deal. Instead, the delegation was met with claims from President Donald Trump that the country is persecuting white minority farmers. Aaron Collins with more on an extraordinary Oval Office meeting.
The meeting started out well. Donald Trump greeted South Africa's president warmly. Inside the Oval Office, Cyril Ramaphosa played his part too, complimenting Trump, bringing some of the American president's favorite golfers along as well.
To you, you said, yes, come along and bring Gary Player, bring any else, and Retief Goosen. I've brought the two of them.
Ramaphosa looking to focus on trade.
We would like to recalibrate those relations between our two countries.
That reset after dozens of white South Africans arrived in the U.S. as refugees, the U.S. paying for their flight, Trump claiming they were persecuted in South Africa. Allegations the U.S. president repeated in this meeting when pressed by reporters.
How do you explain that? They're taking people's land away, and in many cases those people are being executed.
But Trump had a plan to make his point.
People are going to occupy land. We require no permission from you, from the president, from no one.
Playing a video he had at the ready to back up his claims.
White South Africans are fleeing because of the violence and racist laws.
Showing Ramaphosa news clippings too. South Africa's agriculture minister politely pushing back.
It affects all farmers in South Africa, particularly stock theft. It has a disproportionate effect on smallholder black farmers.
But in this meeting, Trump seemed most interested in hearing from the pro-golfers in the room.
It is difficult, but, the guys live a great life despite everything going on.
The meeting ending much as it began, more politely, but with little resolved between the two countries.
They don't want to leave.
Well, after this extraordinary hour-long meeting, there are some big questions that remain unanswered about the state of relations between the U.S. and South Africa, including whether President Trump will take part in G20 meetings set to be held in South Africa in November. Aaron Collins, CBC News, Washington.
Heavy rain in southeastern Australia has triggered flash flooding and cut off entire towns on Wednesday. Authorities have issued snap evacuation orders. Emergency services say crews are giving top priority to rescuing vulnerable people and those who cannot leave their homes. Rivers are above danger levels and heavy rain is expected to continue into the coming days.
Destruction from wildfires can be long-lasting, and for some BC condo owners, it's led to a frustrating standoff. Their homes burned down nearly 2 years ago. They want to rebuild, but can't because of an issue with utilities. Brady Strachan explains.
Right over there in the corner, that back corner, was my place.
This lot of broken concrete and twisted metal is all that's left of Maria Hart's home.
When I came to look at it after and saw the melted cars, that was incredible. It looked like a war zone.
Hart owned a condo in an apartment building on a private resort near Kelowna. Built in the 1970s, Lake Okanagan Resort was a symbol of luxury at the time. But in 2023, most of the buildings, including her home, burned to the ground. Hart and her neighbors want to rebuild, but they can't get building permits until utilities like water and sewer are restored, something the resort had been supplying in the past.
This was our home. It wasn't an investment property. It wasn't a rental. It was what we had planned on retiring in.
CBC News has repeatedly emailed and phoned owners and managers at Lake Okanagan Resort. They have not responded to our questions. With few answers from the resort, these condo owners want the province to step in and force the company to hook up utilities.
That leaves residents like us extremely vulnerable, and there's no repercussions for the utility owner, and they can literally walk away, leaving us basically stranded.
They say the resort has stopped responding to their questions, and despite pleas to the provincial government, nothing substantive has been done yet.
Every level of government has failed us up until this point.
The province says it can't force the resort to restore utilities or transfer them to the condo owners.
This is really the first one in British Columbia that's this extreme. This is the one that's as complicated.
He says it could take years for this issue to be resolved, and it may end up in the courts. Meanwhile, condo owners like Hart are still paying mortgages and other expenses related to their properties.
Friends and family ask me, well, what are your plans? I don't know.
Brady Strachan, CBC News, near West Kelowna.
The Professional Women's Hockey League finals started this week between the Ottawa Charge and the Minnesota Frost. In just its second season, attendance is growing and expansion plans are set. Sarah Levitt looks at how that's going to affect next season.
2 teams, 1 goal. As the puck drops in the final series of the Professional Women's Hockey League's second season, the league and its players have built a steady and fervent fan base. Phillips makes the early save. A sophomore season building the case for even more women's hockey. According to the PWHL, the league averaged nearly 7,500 fans per game, up from 5,500 last season. Helping attract those fans was the so-called Takeover Tour, showcasing the league's talents in 9 cities that don't have teams.
The quality of our hockey is so high and so much fun, so we want people to have the experience live, not just via social, not just via TV. So important for us to get out to different markets for people to see what we have to offer.
The enthusiasm and engagement worked. Next season, 2 expansion teams will join. We got a team! Vancouver and Seattle will bring the league to 8 teams. But expansion comes with sacrifice. Those new teams will get the chance to pick players from existing ones. And some cleaning out their lockers aren't sure if they'll be back, including Montreal's Erin Ambrose.
There's a lot of unknowns. There's a lot of anxiety around it. But I also am really excited because it means that our league's doing something good.
Still, if she is ultimately scooped up,
let's not be the one that cries on media day.
I think that one of the challenges is going to be how to not alienate the fans of the existing teams.
Fans could be disappointed in losing some of their favorites, but teams for now can protect 3 players from the expansion draft.
And it's going to be interesting to see how they thread that needle and see whether they can continue that kind of growth, right?
The league thinks it can be done, hoping the growth of their game is just beginning. Sarah Levitt, CBC News, Montreal.
Canada's main stock index took its biggest tumble in nearly 6 weeks today. American markets fell even harder under pressure from rising U.S. Treasury yields amid worries about the U.S. government's spiraling debt. Here's a look at where things closed as we head to break. Summer's coming. Summer's coming. Everyone repeat it.
Ryan just has a little bit of patience, right? That's all we need.
Amy's bringing the brightness here.
I'm trying.
More ways than one tonight,
by
the way. Yeah.
Push it through.
Yeah. And listen, we have to remember that with the showers come Some also
June flowers.
We're heading into
that too. We're grasping at straws here. Have a look at our viewer picture of the day. This is what I was referring to and when we do see some showers, we can see some very pretty scenes. Hurdle Lake.
Wow, that's gorgeous.
Right?
Can't have a rainbow without rain.
That's right.
Yeah.
Joy, thank you so much. Lake Hurdle, beautiful spot. And thanks to Joy for always sharing great pics from that area. Ryan's picks at cbc.ca. And so, yes, no rainbows tomorrow, as will be a dry forecast here across the province, looking at temperatures ranging between about 12 to 15 or 16. That easterly wind means the warmest temps are going to be northern areas. So the Valley and Colchester, Cumberland, and the North Shore. Friday, it is, yes, damp, periods of rain. Tracking in from west to east throughout the morning into the afternoon for Cape Breton. Temperatures there will struggle a little bit more into those single digits. And this low, as it works its way through very, very slowly, because you note that high is moving to the east and over Newfoundland, it will be basically sitting there. So that low isn't going to be allowed to move to the east. So it will move through with that rain. And you can see it really doesn't make much progress between Friday afternoon and Saturday afternoon, moving very, very little. But note, as the first push of rain moves out, we'll be into what we call the dry slot. And so around in and across Nova Scotia on Saturday, I'm expecting it will indeed be at times dry, maybe even a few sunny breaks wrapping in around that low. Now, as the center of the low gets closer, we'll get into a better chance for some showers. Looks like Saturday afternoon into Saturday evening, and then Sunday, although the timing on that we'll nail down in detail over the next couple of days. And note, next week. Yes.
We're getting there.
Yep.
Light at the end of the tunnel.
Okay.
Exactly.
Thanks, Ryan. A video of a young black bear taking advantage of a quiet weekend morning in Mission, British Columbia is getting a lot of attention online.
Hey, buddy. It's not yours. Oh, my Lord.
The bear is on his hind legs, as you can see there, pushing the dumpster around for a while, but he couldn't quite figure out how to get into his meal on wheels.
Yeah, the youngster is so engrossed he either doesn't notice or doesn't care about the human talking to him. The city of Mission says it receives hundreds of bear sighting reports every year.
It recommends keeping garbage and food scraps inside a secure, non-rolling container until the morning it's collected.
A for effort, though,
The
right?
wheels make it convenient for the bear, for sure. That's it for us tonight. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.
Good night.
Good night.